When David asked me to talk about Amazon and AI, I guess I was a little bit of trepidation. Amazon, one of the most secretive organizations on the earth, and artificial intelligence, one of the least understood, most hyped, worst defined term on the planet at the moment. So thankfully, I only have 15 minutes to give you some views. I'm going to talk about four things, which I think really is how AI plays out in practice when we think about how Amazon is using artificial intelligence. Really think about it in terms of what I'm going to call decision re-engineering. I'm going to try and define AI, talk about how Amazon does AI, and then talk about what it means for the rest of the world and where you can start. So what is going on in the world? This for me is just sort of setting the context, and I think much of this will be very familiar. A lot of digital technologies, and digital technologies are transforming customer behavior. This is all stuff we're very familiar with. The three things that I want to talk about are, one, all this stuff generates vast amounts of data. It's both transactional data, but digital exhaust data, intent data, social data. Again, as we know, there is a huge amount of data spewing around. But importantly, it also changes the economics of retail and commerce. The variabilization of marketing costs, marketing being on a per click, per transaction basis, and new revenue drivers. Businesses used to, stores for example, retailers used to grow through like-for-likes and opening new stores, now have to understand a growth dynamic driven by customer acquisition and retention. The economics of most of commerce has been changed by digital. And all of that has conspired to lead to new decisions and new approaches to decisions. What I see is much as the first wave of computerization 30 years ago led to business process re-engineering. Businesses that took existing processes and computerized them got to the wrong answer. The right approach was to simply completely re-engineer how you were running your business. And what AI and data and digital is doing is forcing businesses to re-engineer decisions. Sometimes that's new decisions, but often it's simply making the same decisions more efficiently, more frequently, at a lower level of granularity, or applying new maths and new logic. And this, for me, is the key. This is where Amazon has been focusing their energies for the last 20 years. What decisions are we talking about? Lots of people focus on bits of this jigsaw, but when I talk to retailers, really we're talking about decisions across the business, from how you process fraud, to how you plan stores, to how you think about customer next best message, to demand forecasting, basket analysis. We have the opportunity to rethink all of these decisions. And my contention is that Amazon 20 years ago set off re-engineering these decisions and recognizing that they were able to think through every retail decision from first principles. Well, what is AI in this context? I really think of AI as a set of technologies and techniques that enable different degrees of decision automation and automation of processes. It's a very, very broad spectrum. It's very poorly defined. It reminds me of a famous legal case in 1964, a US Supreme Court Justice Potter, who was asked to define hardcore pornography. And his conclusion was, he said, it's very hard to define, but I know it when I see it. And I feel the same about AI. It's one of those things that I've avoided now getting into any debates about what it is. It's just one of those things that you know it when you see it. This is from a recent Harvard Business Review article, which I thought was very helpful because it really talked about AI in terms of the cost of prediction. And prediction is simply using data you've got to work out and make inferences about data you haven't got. And if you think about it in those very, very broad terms, you really understand the generality and the power of what AI can do. So what do you do in practice? When you do AI, what exactly are you doing? Well, for me, broadly, there are always these four steps. There are other things you can do, but you always do these four things. You start with an objective. You start with something you are trying to optimize, predict, some objective function. It could be profit, could be revenue, could be the probability of a customer churning, could be something, but you'll start with something you want to understand. And then you need data. There is no AI without data. And typically in AI, you need what's called training data. And training data is quite simply historical examples of the thing you're trying to predict with attributes and data features that might help predict it. You need a model, and a model is some mathematical representation of what's going on. And really the model is trying to do one thing, which is trying to make inferences about the future. It's trying to use data that you've got to make predictions about examples that you haven't seen before, to generalize. It's all maths, which is good, because I'm a mathematician. And the reality is whether you're doing neural nets or support vector machines or logistic regression or there's a whole suite of different approaches, ultimately you're always trying to fit some sort of statistical model to your data. And then you need a feedback loop. You need some way of understanding what did you predict and what actually happened. Now, the reality is AI is getting applied in lots and lots of different environments. And not all environments are the same. And I've got some examples here of where AI works well and where it works not so well. Let's take the objective. On the left is image recognition. You know, does an image contain a dog? Pretty simple. You get on the right, customer attention, where AI is a complex decision, a much more complex objective, which I'll come on to in a bit. Data, on the left, you can have millions of images. Here are millions of images that contain a dog. Here are millions of images that don't contain a dog. Very simple. Again, modeling and getting good customer data with churn data is, again, much, much more subtle. Understanding what training data you need. Very easy to have bias, incomplete training data. What's the model? On the left, the reality is, as we know, children can identify dogs. There is an underlying structure to the essence of a dog that can be discovered. And what these AI models are very good is at discovering very complex structures. When you're trying to model the psychology of churn, it may be the structure is too complex to actually uncover. Very easy for it simply not to work. And finally, the feedback loop. On the left, the outcomes are really simple. You said it was a dog, it's not a dog. You said it wasn't a dog, and it is a dog. On the right, much, much harder in other cases in commerce to isolate the impact of the AI versus what else is going on. So what goes wrong in practice? Conscious of time, I'm just going to pick out two of these, but very easy to pick the wrong objective. The first example was a business, it was a mobile gaming business that was trying to predict churn. Very important, they applied enormous amounts of brain power to some very banal problems on getting people to play games on an app. And they had an existing churn model that was 72% accurate, predicting who would churn. They came up with a new model that was 92% accurate. Amazing. And they thought it was going to be worth about £100 million a year to them. And they put it live, and their revenue immediately declined. I mean, what the hell had happened? And they looked at it, and what was going on was the following. In churn, there are three types of people. There are people who definitely will churn, people who definitely won't churn, and people who are influenceable. And in CRM, you really only care about the people who are influenceable. And their old model wasn't particularly accurate overall, but was very good at picking up all the influenceable people. And the new model was more accurate in general, but wasn't as good as picking up the influenceable people. They picked the wrong objective to optimize. That was one. And the final one is I had to anonymize the vegetable, but I'll tell you the story because it's very interesting. It was a US bank that did a deal with a supermarket, and they built an AI model to predict credit risk based on what people were buying in the supermarket. And they found very, very interesting correlation that people who bought courgettes or zucchinis, as American friends call them, were a good credit risk. Unfortunately, a few months later, a TV chef came up with a new recipe for ratatouille. Sales of courgettes spiked, and it crashed all their models, which no one was watching. And I sit on the board of Sainsbury's Bank, and I've tried to encourage them that we don't want the next banking crisis to be caused by a recipe for ratatouille. So what do? This is really the key to everything. This is a framework from 1978. And in 1978, some clever people were thinking about the automation of undersea exploration. And in fact, if you look at the deployment of AI, it has been deployed enormously in things like autopilot, in warfare, in space exploration, in undersea exploration. And the key is humans. This is a lovely set of acronyms of HITL, HOTL, and HOOTL. Humans in the loop, humans on the loop, and humans out of the loop. And right up at level 10 is basically the machine's completely in control. And right down at the bottom is the humans doing everything. And the reality is that human out-of-the-loop automation is really not going to be deployed in any major way in commerce. The world is too complicated, it's changing too fast. As per my previous slide, there's too many other things going on. And really the key is to understand what is the optimal level of automation on a decision-by-decision basis. This is what Amazon cracked, and this is really the essence of, I think, one, what Amazon has done, and two, what businesses need to do to make sense of this. So what is the Amazon approach? A sort of summary of where we've got to. I think there are 4 key elements that have made Amazon so brilliant at this. The first one is they have a culture that celebrates waste. Every retailer I work with has a culture of obfuscating waste, wishing it away, averaging it, pretending it wasn't there. Amazon celebrates it because they recognize that understanding waste is the only way to prioritize and make things better. The second thing is that in Amazon land, everything is an algorithm. It's a super geeky organization, but their starting position is they can apply data. They can do better than gut and Excel. They can apply data science and AI to some degree. We saw in the previous example, but I remember talking to Amazon 5 or 6 years ago about whether gut instinct was important in fashion or whether they could just apply an algorithm to everything. And essentially, area by area, decision by decision, they're trying to work out how much AI can be applied. The third one is everything is humans and machines. They are training their managers now to manage hybrid teams of humans and AIs. And the Trojan horse in Amazon is they recognize that when they semi-automate things, they watch what the humans are doing and that build more training data to further automate. So again, they see humans as absolutely key to that process. And finally, they've got an obsession about what they measure, and particularly obsessing over outliers. Again, outliers in a lot of retailers and a lot of businesses, it's like, well, let's not worry about them. They don't happen very often. What Amazon realized is that all of these models are statistical models that work very well if things are sort of within one standard deviation. But actually, it's the outliers that really help you understand what the hell's going on. And it's the outliers that'll kill you. So the Amazon are, when the guy who runs Amazon UK, he said, when I get all these emails from angry customers, we don't sort of send them a sort of trite response. They're absolutely fixated about how their algorithms can screw up so badly, because that's the way they improve. So final slide. So where do you start? I think the opportunity for businesses is to re-engineer decisions. As I say to CEOs, if as a consequence of all this data and AI stuff, you make the same decisions you've always made in the same organizational silos, on the same frequency, with the same logic and the same incentives, don't be surprised if nothing changes. And so you have to go into this thinking you're going to re-engineer decisions. So you have to prioritize, you want big dollar value, you want data that can make a difference, and the third one is you need a willing P&L owner. Again, time and again, I see tissue rejection from organizations where you try and impose this sort of stuff on people who aren't ready for it. You then need to work out what is the opportunity to re-engineer the decision on these 4 dimensions. What's the right balance of humans and machines, and then this fixation on measurement so you actually can continually improve. Thank you very much.